Well, folks, we are back at the desk, and it's going to be something a little bit different today. I'm going to be starting a new series for the channel. It's not going to be regularly done. It's going to be here and there, but it's basically, think of it as my time lapse, but a little bit more in depth. I'm actually just going to call it an in-depth build. And part of this is from people who have commented on the channel that they don't like the time-lapse format. However, just with the way I've been building models my whole life, I tend to have multiple models on the go and I only sit at the desk for a brief time here or there. I'm gonna try something different with this one. I'm still gonna be doing time lapses. I'm still working on 4 kits that are in part 2 phase, which is decaling and whatnot. But I'm gonna try to do a bit more of an in-depth build. I'm gonna do it with this kit, and this is why I've decided to start this, is because I really want to start this kit. The ICM 1/48 scale Hampden Mark 1. Now this just came out. I literally picked this up this morning. It arrived at my local hobby shop like 2 days ago, and I finally had time to go get it. So here I am. We're gonna get started on this build. I'm gonna try to release a video every week or two. Outside of my normal video release schedule, just whenever I get enough time to get a video put together, I'll put it together and we will throw it up online and you guys will be able to watch me build this in slightly faster timeline than you're used to seeing. And more videos, more in depth, not just a quick talk here or there with my what's on my desk videos and then slam out a time lapse, which mostly just time lapse and music. I'm going to try to do more talking, more overview, more building. You'll actually get to see the progress on this kit. So we'll see if this works. It all depends on how much time I can dedicate to sitting at this desk and working on this, but I'll try my best. So let's get at it. Let's get this started. We'll get into the cockpit building. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. So here we are, part 1 of this ICM Hampden. And we're gonna start pretty much where the instructions tell us to start. And that's by prepping a lot of this interior stuff for green. There's a lot that's gonna need to be painted black. Some of these will be painted steel. But the vast majority of things, all of this cockpit flooring, the insides of the fuselage, these frames, which I'll see about getting them glued in before I glue the clear pieces in. All of this stuff down here, all of this cockpit floors, sides, all of this is green. So I'm going to start by going through and trimming out all the pieces that need to be green. And like I said, I'm going to play around and see this area here. I'll do this first. I'll see if we can get these side pieces glued in. And I'll explain to you what these are. If you haven't seen my... Sorry, I didn't want to talk over the sound of the plastic bags. If you haven't seen my review of this kit, I go over kind of what those little pieces are. But let's take a look at it now. So we'll start just with the 1/2. So what side am I supposed to be working on here? I'm supposed to be working on the right half. Let's get the right half trimmed out. And we'll clean up the seams on this. And I'll show you kind of what we're talking about here. If you do have any questions on what I'm doing, either feel free down below in the comments to ask away, or alternatively, take a look at some of my tips and tricks videos where I go over some of these techniques in a little bit more detail. They are dated. They're back when I first started my channel, so they are not necessarily the greatest videos in the world, but I will eventually go through and... And I just managed to cut the wrong piece because over here it said 1, so I thought I needed D1, but I actually need D2, and that's telling me I need step 1. So there you go, lesson learned. That is also something I brought up during the review I did of this kit. The instructions explain, actually what I should have done, which I never actually did. Yeah, see, so here it actually explains it. The number that's in a circle is the assembly unit. So where this says 1, that means that's the part you assembled in step 1. And you see that a little bit farther back when you come here. There's the part you assembled in step 17. There's the part you assembled in step 31. That's the part you assembled in step 33. So it actually gives you which step you assembled that part in, which is interesting, but it's also a little annoying because, for example, you know where that is. And if you built that on step, for example, here, if you built this fuselage having step 17, well, unless you've labeled it step 17, you're never going to know that is step 17 other than by looking at it. And if you have to look at it and figure out by the way it looks, you don't need to put an assembly number there. So a little bit of a weird, in my opinion, way that they're doing that. But hey, that's the way they want to do it. So the other thing you need to worry about, you might be able to see, you know what? I'm actually going to zoom you in a little bit. Let's replace green with something fresh, and I'll bring you in a little bit so you get a better view of what's going on here. So when you cut these parts out, especially on these smaller parts, you'll notice there's all of these little nubs that are sticking out, and those are all ejector pin points. So that's where, when this is molded in the mold, when the plastic's injected, they need a way to push this out. And if they do it when the plastic is still soft, because it's still soft when it comes out of the mold, it's injected as a liquid into the molds, and when they are coming out of the molds, this plastic is still soft and it cools on its own as it comes out of the mold. The mold is actually kept warm to help with the movement of the plastic. And if you push them out when they're hot, you'll notice these little tiny ejector pin markings, little semicircular indentations that happen where the metal pins push against this and push this plastic out of the mold. On something this small, A, if the pin pushes on it, you'll bend the part and deform it, and B, you'll leave massive ejector pins that are very visible. So they add those little tabs on the plastic, and that's where those pins push against. And it helps push the part out of the mold without damaging the actual part. Now I'm going to go through and do a little bit of cleanup with the knife, just gently. You don't want to cut too deep because you can get, like that, see? As I'm saying it, I go ahead and do it. Here, I'll do it on the cutting mat. As I was saying, you don't want to go too deep because you can actually gouge the plastic and leave gouges and cut too deep. But you want to be able to just a little bit get the worst of it off with your knife, and then move on to a sanding stick to continue. And just go through. We'll sand all those nubs down. I'm not going to do the whole model this way. I'm going to do a little bit of it, and then I'll do some and we'll come back. But I want to show you guys where we are with the kit and what I'm talking about. A big point of this kit that I want to point out to everybody, and it's at this stage of the build, so it's a good time to do it. I think, no, there's another one here. And there's another one here. Just want to make sure you catch all of them. I think that's it. Okay, I'll do the pegs on this one later. So the important thing I want to point out is there is this little recessed pocket formed by the wing joint molding. That exists on the real plane. It does not need to be filled. It does not need to be modified. It exists on the real plane. So you can see how that glues in like that. That is exactly how the real plane is. I have pictures of this. I'll put one up here. It's not the best picture, I will admit. I took this at the Canada Museum of Flight in Langley, British Columbia, and they have a Hampden on display. And on that Hampden, you can look up through this bottom gunner's compartment, which I did, and in the picture, you can see how the skins go in behind and disappear behind the framework. So this framework actually sticks out, and then these skins are brought down and out to this lower wing structure. So this is exactly how the real plane is. So don't attempt to fill that in and clean it up. This is how it's supposed to look. So it'll be a really interesting look once it does get weathered and cleaned up. But you can see there, do I want to glue that in before I paint? I just might. Although it really wouldn't matter. You're not going to see it a whole bunch. I'll probably glue those in after. Get a first coat of paint down, and then glue those in after the fact. Yeah, I'll glue those in later. But yeah, so that's just one thing I wanted to make sure you guys are aware, that this pocket does not need to be modified at all. Leave it as is. It's fine. So I'm going to go around, clean up all of the sprue gates off of this fuselage half. I'm going to switch to a finer sanding stick. Ooh, this is going to be fun. This plastic is flexible. Yeah. It's not, she's pretty soft. Like you can see that there's some flexiness to it, which is good. It's not brittle. It's not going to snap, but it also means that when you're trying to do something like what I was just doing, you definitely increase the chances of bending something. So yeah, just take your time. Be careful with stuff. No need to snap something off when you're doing this. Anyways, be back in a second. I'll get a bunch of these parts cleaned up and we will come back. Okay, now I got those parts cleaned up. I got the wing box and the other stuff is in here. What we need to worry about now is the drilling of the holes, which it's really weird because there's all kinds of holes pre-marked on here, but we still have to drill 4 of the 8 holes. You need a 0.8 millimeter drill, which the bit, which I did. Now this is not a very good, actually, you know what I'm gonna do now that I think about it, because I don't like this. I don't like this particular pin vise. I'm gonna put my super glue needle back in there. I'm gonna pull out my other pin vise. I bought an Amazon El Cheapo pin vise, and all the drill bits that came with it are garbage. I can't use any of the bits. They don't drill. I don't think the ends have been sharpened. The ones that came with that one over there are sharpened, but the pin vise itself is no good. So I'm just gonna feed the good drill bit from the bad pin vise into the good pin vise. Whoop. Well, that ain't good. Put the, what was I saying? The good drill bit from the bad pin vise into the good pin vise with the bad drill bits. And then I'll be able to drill my holes. Now, the other thing it gives you are these weird measurements where, for example, your holes are supposed to be 1.25 millimeters up from this panel line here. And your other ones at the back are 3.34 millimeters up from the panel line. Well, what I did is, if you go farther in the instructions and you find out what bomb racks are, which are part here, W28, all you have to do is go and grab said parts, which are here, W28. And then by using a set of calipers, I was able to precisely and scientifically, with the Mark IV eyeball, line up my calipers pretty much with the center lines of the mounting holes. That then means this side is also lined up more or less on the center of the holes. The good news is you got a bit of wiggle room. This isn't precision machining, it's a plastic model. So from there, I was able to use said little pointy bits, line it up with the one hole, and then just poke, like, you know, press in and mark a little tiny spot. And then I marked it with a red Sharpie. So at the end of the day, I'm able to pretty much see where those holes need to be. So what I can then do is take my pin vise and start, I'll drill the existing holes first. If you don't have a pin vise, honestly, you can just use the tip of an X-Acto knife. A sharp X-Acto knife will do this exact same job with very little effort. And that gets those 4 done. And then what I'm going to do is very carefully line up that pin, the drill bit, with the little mark I made. Don't put too much pressure because you don't want the drill bit to walk. Let the drill bit do the work. And you can drill that hole. Now, before I go any farther, I'm actually going to cut out one of these bomb racks. Luckily, I do get 3 sprues of weapons in the kit, and you only need, which actually means you get 6 bomb racks. You only need 4 to complete the kit. So in the off chance that this bomb rack goes missing between now and the time I actually build this up, I won't actually be stuck because I'll have others. But what that allows me to do is go back and test how good was my work. And I'm off just slightly. So I'm going to take my am I going blind? If any of you out there see where my X-Acto knife is, can you yell at me? Tell me where I put my X-Acto knife, because I swear to God, I just had it, and now I don't. Well, where did my knife go? Where did I? I'm telling you, getting old. Getting old is no fun. Please, somebody out there, yell. Tell me, where's my X-Acto knife? Ah, put it over here. You can take your calibrated X-Acto knife. You got to make sure it's calibrated. At least once every 6 months, you got to get your knife calibrated. If you don't use a calibrated X-Acto knife when you do this, there's a good chance that you're going to make a mistake. So take your calibrated X-Acto knife and just jam it in the hole and twist. And you'll waller out that hole very precisely with, you got to be precise. But then you can waller out that hole, and that will allow, that should allow, the other thing you can do is just jam your thing in there and then just give it one of these. Get your knife here, and then give it one of these. But yeah, if you do it properly and you use your appropriate calibrated tools, all of that should line up, and you'll eventually be able to get your bomb rack into the mounting location. I just don't want to snap anything, especially this early in the process. But now I know I need to go just slightly farther out. I need to use the calibrated knife a little bit more. Do it from the other side as well. I don't know how much of the inside you're going to see once you get that in there. I won't know that until we actually start assembling it, but that now should, there we go. See, look at that. No issues. Bomb racks fit perfect. So that's all I want to do now. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to get all these drilled, and I'll use that bomb rack as my tester to make sure that they will fit properly. And I can do that work now before you get so far in the kit that you've got bits and pieces glued in place, because you don't want to be doing this when you've got, you know, all your cockpit seats or this is glued into the fuselage. And then you realize, uh-oh, my bomb rack doesn't actually fit. So take the time, do this early enough in the process that it doesn't become a problem. That one looks like it should go in without any problem. I say that, but I got swarf in both holes, so I'm just going to take my knife, just clean that up a little bit. Make sure it's clean. Anyways, I'm not going to continue with this. Let's just go ahead. I'm going to get all this done. We'll come back and you'll see what it looks like when I have all the holes properly drilled and calibrated and ready to go. Well, I just discovered that ICM made this way more complicated than it needs to be. I realized as I was working on it that these holes, the ones that are pre-marked, end up perfectly centered inside these little square markers. And then the holes I drilled were just slightly short of that mark, weren't quite centered. And that's where I had to kind of waller it out and work the holes back closer to center. So on this one, I just drilled in the center of that little square, which basically comes out exactly where I made my red mark. And then there's no messing around at all. The part literally just, well, it's easier to do without the tweezers. It literally just falls into place. You don't have to do any type of messing around. So literally all you have to do is just take the part, get your drill bit as centered as you can possibly get it. Drill. I usually come back from the other side. Just make sure there's no plastic jammed in the hole. Like literally nothing fancy at all. And I can just take my part and put it in place. Just like that. You don't need to do any measuring or anything. So yeah, don't measure. Don't do any of that. Just literally, if you're doing the bomb racks, just drill your holes in the center of that little square and you'll be perfect. There'd be no issues at all. Wish the instructions had said that. That would have made my life a little bit better. But one of those things, I think somebody just made it overly complicated. One person had done all the measuring to figure out where the holes need to be, and somebody else was doing the CAD drawings of where these little bits have to be, and the two people never talked to each other to realize that they were both exactly the same. So there you go. No measuring required. Just center your holes inside the two little frames. I'll actually zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about, just in case you're missing it. You literally only have to drill, if it will focus, there we go. You just have to center your hole in between these two little lines. Down here, you can see how my holes were just a little too far forward of center, and that's where I had to play the game with my calibrated X-Acto knife. But if you just go ahead and drill the holes dead center in between those two little squares, everything works out fine. So that is my recommendation to you. Let's move on and we'll see what's next. Okay, so now that we have that part cleaned out and drilled out as planned, I'm gonna go ahead and start gluing the little pieces together that we need to glue. So let's get that done. Get the parts out, get the glue out, and we're just gonna follow along and do step 7 minus the chemical toilet because I can glue that on at a later date. Now, as always, when you're doing this stuff, it's good to test fit things ahead of time. Make sure you understand where everything is supposed to go and how everything's supposed to fit together. Clean up any issues you might see. Just gonna square that off. Try to get a nice tight fit. You can see how it tucks into this little seam at the back here. I want to make sure that that lip is nice and tight, which that definitely looks the part. I had a little bit of a wave in it from when I cleaned up that seam, so I'm just going to use this long, straight sanding stick, clean that edge up just enough that it squares it off. Try to keep that angle nice and sharp so it tucks in. And yeah, bit of liquid glue, that'll just completely hide itself. So I'm gonna do just a touch of this thicker white Tamiya glue, just a slight touch at either end and up here where the little locking pins are. I'll start by putting the pointed end into its slot, and then I'll bring it forward. We'll get those locking pins in place, and that's it. Gentle pressure just to make sure all of that's going to seat properly. I get some liquid glue. Just put a touch of liquid glue at both ends. That'll capillary down the seam, and we'll make sure that that has a nice tight bond. Now you can see up here where some, I don't know if you can make it out in the camera, some of that thicker Tamiya white is starting to ooze out a little bit. Once you brush on the liquid glue, that'll actually like soften that and will smooth out that thicker glue and hide the fact that that was oozing out. So that there, that's all you need to worry about. Now we'll do these two little bits, and the one that has the little circle piece goes on this left side, which is actually the right side of the aircraft because this is the nose. So this one goes on that side. That one goes on the other side. I just noticed I still have the tiniest of sprue gates here that I got to clean up. Okay, so I want to do same thing, just a touch of the white. I find this is good to act like a tack weld, and then the green, the thin, to me extra thin, is kind of the finish weld. So I just put a little bit on each end. This stuff will stay liquid for a while, and actually the longer you let it sit, the more it softens the plastic. So I mean, you can't go for hours, but a minute or two, whereas this extra thin will burn off and cook off quick. The extra, the Tamiya regular, the white, it'll sit for a few minutes and kind of chew, and then you can go ahead and stick it on, and it's already softened up that plastic, so when this goes down, it kind of bites properly. Preferably not like that. And then you want to put some sideways pressure, get it to touch against that little lip. Just like that. And there we go. You can see how that white, the regular Tamiya white, has grabbed it and held it. Now I can come along with the extra thin. I can go on this side, but you have a chance of ruining the plastic. I'm going to come in from behind, touch it along the top of that little ridge, and again, it'll capillary down into the seam, and hold it nice and tight. And then all I got to do is just put a little bit of tiny, I think I missed it on that side. Running out of this glue. I got to get some more. There we go. Perfect. Now I'll just give her a little squeeze, make sure she's on there nice and tight. I also want to make sure, if you look straight down, you want to make sure that they're level. They're not splayed out at all. So now is the time to check that. Make sure you have them oriented the way they need to. You can always grab the fuselage side, which I have here, and you can always put it in place to just make sure that it's actually seating properly. And you can see how all of this is all going to interlock really nicely now that I'm actually looking at it. So whereas this piece here where these kind of fit down inside, when you put this side piece on, this floor I should say, those little pieces we just put on actually like grab. Let's see here. Where am I going? Where am I going? Like that? Yeah, see? They actually grab around that frame and just lock everything together. Nice and tight. That's a really clever little piece of engineering there. I like that. So this piece has the little gusset, so when it glues together it looks good. Back here, this guy, yeah, they all tuck down inside the gap, and they look the part completely. Everything blends in nicely, and it just, when that's all painted and highlighted and shadowed and weathered, that's just going to look unbelievably good. God damn it, I like this kit. Yeah, this kit. I am so happy with this kit. Yeah. Cannot complain in the slightest. I'm not even at the stage to paint or assemble, and I'm already loving this thing. So close the glue before I make a mess. I'm gonna start by getting, I think I'm gonna move over here to step 10. And I'll get this cockpit floor and the seat, and I'll start assembling that. And then I can do this one later. I have to figure those out. Yeah. Let's get these pieces cut. We'll get those out. I need, surprisingly, D again. So I want D26, which is the cockpit floor.
I found this on the web.
You know what? I'll do the side pieces. I'm not going to do the pilot seat right now. I'm going to grab D11, D25, and D10. So 10, 11, and 25. That's these big pieces here. 10 and 11 and 25, which is this guy here. So let's get these guys cleaned up. These are these big guys that tuck into, I think it's this one, goes on this side. They fit into, no, it's this one. They fit into the side here, and I wasn't sure what these are, but it looks to be some kind of structural member of some form. I don't know. But yeah, they tuck up into this place here. Nice positive location too, but yeah, I'm going to get this stuff all cleaned up, get all these sprue gates cut off, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've gone ahead, I've prepped a lot more than I had initially planned on, but this is, for the most part, the vast majority of the interior parts that need to be painted the RAF interior green, and that's kind of what I wanted to prep. So we've got cockpit floor as well as a brace. This is part of the rear turret opening. These are those weird structural pieces I'm going to try to glue on earlier in the assembly than it tells me to. Oops, we got that. These are your chemical toilet, your seats. This is a piece that gets glued on to the inside. I think it has to do with flaps, I think. That gets glued onto the inside of the fuselage. Rear bulkhead. This is the lower part of the, I believe, the lower part of the rear bulkhead. No, yes, this is the turret. This goes below the turret, and then this is the pilot's seat. So we're going to assemble these, this, and I'm going to look at possibly gluing these in place. Two things I want to point out. For all of this, cleanup was simple. It was very clear and obvious where sprue gates needed to be cleaned up. The one thing I did want to mention, this little piece here, which is step 15, this part here, A11, this lower shelf with the radio that goes up inside the upper rear turret. There are, on one side, little tiny nubs that stick out. My guess is it's a seating point that goes into the side of the fuselage. I haven't actually dug that deep yet, but I do believe it hangs out the other way. So, yeah, this shelf kind of sits somewhere in here, and these little pegs are supposed to stick out. So do not cut off and sand off those little pegs. They are needed. The other thing I want to mention is in this rear bulkhead, there's these two little bottles. I'm not sure if they're fire extinguishers or not. Instructions say to paint them black. I'm going to glue them in place and then just paint the bottles black after I paint everything cockpit green. But the one thing I want to point out, and it's surprising for such, I mean, I guess it's not surprising really. It's still a injection molded kit. Once you start cleaning up this sprue gate, you start to notice there is a pretty significant mold seam, a step in the mold, so it leaves a ridge. So you want to take your time and make sure you clean these bottles up. That side, this particular one was really bad. I think the back side of this one, I'm not sure how well that gets captured on the camera, but there is a significant step that I can catch with my nail. So it's not, I mean, it's such a small part of the kit. When it's down inside the fuselage, you're never going to notice that. But it only takes a few seconds to just sand that smooth. So I recommend taking the time and doing that. Just make sure you get it cleaned up properly. It's a little small and finicky, but I think for taking that much time to clean it up, I think it's worth doing to make sure you don't have that step on the back. So let's get the seat glued together. I'll get this glued together. I'm gonna get this part glued together. I'm also gonna do something special with this chemical toilet. You'll see that in a little bit. I have a plan to really make that pop. So let's get gluing. I need the instructions so I can actually make sure I'm doing this right. So how does this go? It looks like this just butt joints. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, that's actually really easy. So you can see the legs that hang down on the bottom of the back go on the outside of these two pegs, and then the angle of the arms line up and give you your seat back angle. That's a really nice little piece of engineering and makes gluing this together really easy, and it actually gives you a lot of gluing surface. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this Tamiya white, the normal glue, put a little double in that corner and a little bit in that corner. And again, that's going to act as like a tack weld, hold it in place. For those of you who are wondering, by the way, I've switched out the brush on my Tamiya white with the small brush that comes from the extra thin. Normally this has a big, massive brush and it's really, really hard to use. I just swapped the brushes out. and it gives you a lot more fine control of where this thick glue gets placed. I know a lot of people complain they don't like the white glue because it's so big and messy, but I find by switching to the small brush, it gives you just a little bit extra control. And now that that's on, I'm going to switch to the Tamiya Extra Thin and just flood on the back side here, that seam. And so both the back legs as well as those little nubs that stick out of the bottom half now have tons of glue around them. That should weld up quite nicely and not cause any problems in the long term. Let's get these glued together. This one I'm actually just going to use Extra Thin. Another interesting little tool, if you haven't seen them before, these are like, I gotta clean it up a little bit. These are like nail, I picked this up on the Midwest Model Shops page, actually, the guy who does the ships. These are like sticky wax pencils that are used in the beauty industry for applying like gems to fake nails. When you go to like an esthetician and is it an esthetician? Or is an esthetician the one that does surgeries? Anyways, the people who do nails. These are little like sticky wax, and they're for picking up gems and sticking gems onto fake nails when you're getting your nails done. But they work really, really well in this application for picking up little tiny plastic pieces. So I'm just going to put, oh, that's a bad idea. I don't think there's any particular they are basically the same, so I don't think there's any particular order in which way I put these, except for the fact that the bottom of the bottle needs to face down. So then all I do is I just pick this up with the wax, and you'll see it sticks quite nicely, and it allows me to place, and there you go. The stickiness of the glue is enough to overcome the stickiness of the wax, and the part just drops right off. And it allows putting little tiny pieces like that in place a lot easier than tweezers. You don't want to pick the tweezers up and they go ba-doing and the piece goes flying off into a corner. You don't get that when you use this. As long as you pick it up at a proper angle, it should just fall into place. Just, oh, see? Didn't get the right angle on that one. A bit more glue. My Tamiya Extra Thin flashed off. There we go. And that is how you do that. So same thing, I'm just going to flood the area with a little bit of glue. Let that capillary down into the seam. Perfect. I can still see a little ridge on the side of that bottle, but I'm going to live with it. As I said, it's such a tiny little part, and when you realize, you know, when this is in place, how little of that you're actually really going to see at the end, I'm not going to worry too much about it. So now you know what? I already have this out. Let's do this piece here. This is D54. It's in step 8 here. It's a little piece that just gets glued into the fuselage, which looks like, yeah, it looks like it gets glued in right there. Although, am I missing? You know what? I might have to glue this in later. Let's see here. I think it covers, bad set of tweezers. I think it covers some of the other parts that you glue in place. And if I glue this in now, yeah, 100%. So there's a piece that gets glued in to this section right here. There's an indent. there's an indent in the side of the fuselage where a piece is glued in there, and that piece gets painted black. And then this piece glues in and then covers across the top. So if you glue this in now, you're never going to be able to get that other piece in. And if you glue the other piece in now, it's going to be a real pain to go back after the fact and paint that black. So I'm going to paint this piece separately, and I'll glue it in after I have everything else done. So really, the next thing I'm going to do, I'll get the armrests glued into the chair. And this is going to be relatively easy. I'll use the Tamiya white. Get a little dollop in there. Luckily, like I said, there's lots of positive fit on here. There's no concerns about trying to figure out where these parts go. Everything is easy to see, easy to locate, easy to key. And just like that, that part is in. I'll paint this all the interior green color, and then I'll come back after and I'll pick out some details. I'm probably going to paint the seat back as well as possibly these armrests in leather. At least the seat back will get painted in leather. I might just leave these sides as green. I'll have to do some research to see how these seat armrests were actually painted, if there are even any pictures of them, because I don't know if there is. Add some Tamiya extra thin back here just to make sure that all welds together, and then we'll leave that alone. That will dry up nicely. Next thing I'm going to do, I have the cockpit floor. And you can see here in step 14, the cockpit floor, once it's all assembled, gets glued in, and then there's this little brace, which is this part here, D39. I'm going to try to glue all that together first before I start assembling the fuselage. And looking at this, it looks like that should be relatively simple to do. It's just a bit of glue, and then according to this, if the piece itself, the little box at the bottom, the little nub, is offset to one side. So it looks like the offset goes towards the pilot seat. So the offset goes this way. The arms should be offset to the left. The nub should be offset to my left, my right. So the arms offset forward. The little bump out should be offset aft. All of that should go together quite nicely, and I'll just test it quickly. I'll put this in place, and that should, oh yeah, see, that lines up perfectly. There's a little, so again, the engineering of this kit is beautiful. There's the indent along here, and then there's a little ridge on the side of the cockpit floor, and that locates that cockpit floor perfectly. And there's the tiniest little notch up here in the nose that little brace just nicely sits into. So that's gonna be nice and easy to get all of that lined up exactly how you want it. And again, what this means is the more pieces I can assemble prior to painting, the less worry I have later when you're trying to glue two painted surfaces together. So I'm just trying to knock off as much of the assembly as possible before we start painting. So all of these are ready to go. I can dump them in here. All this stuff is pretty much ready to go for painting. I might even start painting this today. We'll see. Chemical toilet. This piece I can't assemble yet. That's going to dry. That is going to dry. The next thing I'm going to work on is there's a lot of little things that need to get glued into the side of the fuselage that will eventually be painted the interior green. For example, here in step 5, there's D40, which fills in a square, and you have the same thing over here at step 22. You have D41 going in and filling in that hole. You also have this piece E10, which gets painted the interior green color, plus those two angled parts that I'm going to try to fit in. So I'm going to go ahead and trim out D40 and D41, and we'll start gluing those, and we'll glue these all into the side of the fuselage. Let's see, D40 and D41. Here we go, 40 and 41. So I'm also just going to make sure I keep track of it. D40 will be on my left. D41 will be on my right. That way, just in case there is actually a difference in the shape of the part, if they are sided, not symmetrical, then I don't mix up which one is which, because that'll be very difficult to figure out after the fact. There is the slightest ejector pin marking on the inside. I'm going to sand that out as much as I can. I'm going to go to a slightly coarser sanding stick. Actually, and that's the outside of the kit, because that sits that way. So that's actually going to be the outside of the kit that's got the ejector pin marking on it. So that is really annoying. I'm going to sand that down as well as I can here and try to polish all the scratches out. Make sure that when it's on the outside of the fuselage. Although, yeah, I'm still going to try to do as much as I can. I don't want to have to do a lot of sanding on the exterior after the fact, ruin any of that really nice detail that's out there. So I'm just going to do my best to polish all those scratches off before I glue it in. This is why it's important to do your checks, test fit, and make sure you're figuring everything out before it's too late. And this is also why I'm doing this, so that you guys don't have to learn the hard way. I could be doing all this for nothing and just be completely wrong with how it fits, but I'm going to take the time. Even if it's on the inside, it's going to be right up in the nose. It's going to be very visible. So I want to make sure that I don't have any ejector pins, or at least a minimum of them. I don't usually care about ejector pin markings in my build, but as I'm doing this to show you guys, I'm going to take my time and make sure I do it right. Now, let's glue those in and glue those in. So if I get my instructions, we'll start with step 5, which is the right side of the fuselage. I'm not going to glue any of my clear pieces in yet. Step 5 also wants you to glue in this clear Perspex nose section. I'm not going to do that right now. I want to get as much of this interior painted and weathered as possible, and then glue that on, and then fit it all together after. So D40 is the one that goes on this side. And it looks like, yeah, so there's a little lip at the bottom that faces down. You'll also notice there's 3 sides that have the overhang, whereas one side doesn't. I am going to do a little bit more cleanup on this side. So they are definitely sided. You need to make sure that you put D40 in the right half of the fuselage and D41 in the left hand of the fuselage. Otherwise, they will not fit properly. So that should just fall. Whoop. See, this is where this piece comes in handy. That should just fall right into place. There we go. On the outside, that does not look nice at all. Now, it's possible this is supposed to be a filled-in window, but that is not pretty at all. I don't know what is going on with this, but this fit is not nice. I don't know. I'm gonna take a look at the markings. Yeah, it looks like it's supposed to be a visible panel. It might have been a window that got filled in where it was supposed to be a window and they ended up deciding not to use the window. I don't like that at all. That's gonna take... Yeah. I'm going to go with it just because I'm already here and I don't feel like making, and I don't have enough references to know one way or the other, but I think on the outside I'm going to have to do a little bit of prep work to make sure that this cleans up properly because it does not look nice. I'll show you here in a second once I get a bit of glue in it so you can see what the other side looks like. I am going to glue from the other side as well. Try not to smush. I need something to push on. You know what? I'll use paper. Use a little toothpick here. Something that I can push hard, but isn't going to damage the plastic. X-Acto knives and the tweezers will put a little pinhole in it. This piece of wood won't. You know what? It's actually not that bad from the outside. You can clearly tell that there is a panel there, but I think you're supposed to see that panel. So again, I'm not going to worry too much. I'm just going to go with it. Nah, it's not horrible. It's not perfect, but it's not horrible. So I'll live with it. We'll get, actually, while I have this out, let's do that other part. So here we go. This is that part D11, which is this. And it fits in here. I don't think that's going to interfere at all with my interior piece. I also need to know what goes on the exterior. There's this little window opening here. I want to make sure I don't get caught. Okay, there we go, D56. So that also gets filled in, D57 and D56. So those little windows get filled in from the outside. Which is fine, I can glue that in. So yeah, let's do that. Let's get this piece glued in here. It's got a nice positive location. You can see it gets in there. It's got a little wiggle room, but enough that you're gonna be able to know where it seats. So I'm gonna get that glued in while I'm working on the side. Put a good big old dollop of this glue. Let it sit, let it chew for a bit. And then we'll glue that in. Yeah, that's nice. Whoop. And then before I put any liquid glue, I'm just going to fit this piece into place and make sure that it doesn't interfere, which it doesn't. It actually lines up perfectly. I really wonder what that is. That's a weird little structural member in there, and I'm not entirely sure what its purpose is or why it's there. Anyways, whoever designed the plane knew what they were doing, so I'm just going to assume it's supposed to be like that. Now we can move to the other side. We'll get these pieces glued in. I'm not going to continue doing it on the camera. You've seen me do this, but I'm going to, yeah, I'll get these glued into the other side. I'll let all this glue set, and then we'll come back and we'll continue. I'll probably end up gluing this into place while I'm here so that I can paint it, and we'll just keep plugging along, seeing what else I need to trim up and clean up and install in place as we go. And then I can actually start painting the interior. Okay, well here we are. I have pretty much all of the interior parts that need to be painted green ready to go. These are all the parts I have taken off the sprues and cleaned up that I don't need to do anything with right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them all into this little cup, and eventually I will get them ready to go for paint. Now there's a couple of items that I need to assemble. So we've got the ammo bin for the fixed machine gun. This has got to be glued in the fuselage. These oxygen tanks, I'm assuming they're oxygen bottles of some sort. They're supposed to be painted black, but there's this little shelf attached to it that I'm assuming will be painted interior green. So I'm actually going to spray paint this entire thing interior green and then brush paint the little bottles black. And then these will get painted aluminum at the end. And I think that's a better way to get that done. It'll be a little bit more accurate at the end of the day. Also of note, I want to show you this little stool. And we'll do the stool first because surprisingly, I'll zoom in here a little bit. There is a lot of flash on this little stool. And I don't know why. On these legs, there's tons of flash. It's a brand new mold. I don't know. Normally flash is due to an older mold that doesn't seal properly because it's worn out, and it allows excess plastic to squeeze out from between the two molds. This particular one, I mean, it's a brand new kit and it's only on the legs. You can see up here where it comes across to the cushion, there's no flash. There's no flash on any of the other sides, just the two sides of this little stool. And I hope it's a one-off with my kit and not an indicator that there's a problem with the mold. I also have the same issue with this little piece. It's the compass that goes on the floor in front of the pilot. And the same thing happens right there. That one leg has tons of flash on it. No idea why. Anyways, that has now been trimmed. This actually gets glued down inside here. And I believe it's got 2 long legs and 2 short legs, specifically because of the curve. I don't know whether I'm going to glue that in. I think I'll glue it in later. If I glue it in first, I might miss paint in the middle. So I'll probably paint that green, this green, then glue it together, and then paint the cushion after the fact. I think that's my plan. Okay, first thing I guess I'll do, no, let's glue these together. Should test fit those first. I haven't done that yet. It'll be just my luck. I'll glue it and then something will be. I also didn't sand this the sprue gate down completely. I left a little tiny bump there specifically because I'm going to be gluing this and I'm going to have a little tiny bit of liquid glue, most likely ooze out the side, and I want to be able to go around and sand it down, and that is going to help me clean up the edges. Man, that's a nice fit. Very, very tight fit on that one. Bottles next. Same thing. I didn't clean the sprue gates down completely. That just allows me when I go around after the fact to clean up any oozing plastic. It will allow me to sorry, just getting distracted here. It'll allow me to clean the seams up again. Very, very good seams, no issues. The funny thing is there's a band in the middle, which is kind of looks like the strap, the representation of the strap that would be holding these 2 bottles into that frame. And it fades off on one part. The band is very clearly visible on this side all the way around, and then here it starts to fade down into nothing. And I didn't do much sanding on that side, so that I think is just a weakness in the mold. But again, we're talking about such a small, insignificant detail on a part that will, for the most part, be completely hidden on the inside of the fuselage. So not something I'm going to, you know, if it was on the outside of like a tank or a truck or something, it'd be a bigger problem and something you could probably replicate with a little bit of aluminum foil or something. Just cut a little strip and glue it on. But for something that's the inside of a fuselage on a plane, and especially at this scale, not really worth my effort to fix it. Your mileage may vary. Everyone builds differently. Okay, so that's that. I'm gonna let that and the ammo box dry. I'll go back and I'll sand those seams down a little later. The next step, I've taped it together. I couldn't help myself. I had to get a look at what this looks like together, and you can tell it's going to be a nice kit. This floats right now, obviously. There's some play with the floor, but once you get that rear bulkhead in place, that'll lock that in. Cockpit floor is amazing. When you look down in here, it's going to be so nice with the cockpit open. You're going to be able to look inside and see all that detail. Yeah, I'm very, very excited for this, especially, again, looking up inside the nose, being able to see all that detail in behind the cockpit the way it is on the real plane. It's going to be fun when this is done. I might even have to see if I can put this on display at the local hobby shop. I might be the first person locally in my area to complete this. So I might have to see if the local hobby shop wants me to put this on display, or if I can put it on display. We'll see. I've kind of just jumped right into this kit with both feet, and I'm flying along. Get this apart. Get these pieces out. There was something else I wanted to check. It looked like there's an artifact. It looks like there's a little, again, like a mold artifact here, where some plastic is squeezed out from between the two molds. I'll have to take a look at that before, actually, no, I'm going to do it now, before I paint. Make sure, yeah, that's not supposed to be there. If you look at the instructions here, on step 10, when you're looking at the part, there's these two little legs that stick up, and that's what I'm looking at. And on mine, the front. Hold on a sec. Yeah, the front one here, it has this giant, I'll move my light over so you can see what I'm showing you. There's this huge sprue artifact here sticking out. This should not be there at all. I don't know. There's also on this side, you can clearly see where there's a seam, a mold line. So there's two molds that come together, and that's forming, well, probably it's a slide. I'd have to assume that's a slide molding in order to mold this type of piece. Anyways, there's a bit of an artifact on this side, but this one's got a huge, big one where clearly the mold didn't come together properly. And again, I just hope that's not a sign of a larger quality issue with these molds. But I want to trim that up. I'm just going to sand the insides of those little pieces a little bit, just to flatten them, knock off a little bit of the step. Again, it'll be out of the pilot's seat. You're not even really going to be able to see it. I mean, you can get the pilot seat out here and you can see, maybe, there we go, pilot seat. You know, the pilot seat is literally sitting right on top of that and completely hiding almost all of that detail. So you really can't tell it's there, but if you notice it, take the time to fix it, you know, and it's going to make my life a little bit easier down the line. Now I need to glue that piece. That's here on step 22. It's part E10. It points it into the fuselage. I'm going to try to figure out where exactly that's supposed to go, which E10 looks like it's inside this slot right here. Oxygen bottles go down here. That I already glued in. D44 is what goes here. This is D58. That's E60. So yeah, that slot right there is where part E10 goes. And the little circly bit goes forward. So I'm going to get some glue in there. I will use liquid glue just to make sure that I fill that trough. And then I'll stick that part in there. Just like that. My guess is that's some sort of a trim wheel or something, I would assume. Hard to say without knowing the airplane very well. But there we go. That is the vast majority of the interior pieces added that are going to be painted green. I've also, as I just kind of showed you with the compass stand, I've trimmed off from the sprues a lot of the pieces here for inside the fuselage that needed to be painted black. There's one, I think, actually there's a few I still need to do. I'm still going to need to do the yoke, which needs to be assembled, but I want to get these parts all trimmed up first. I need to look at E60, I believe. I still need to trim off. That's D44, I believe. Oh, come on. No, that's the other side. So I still need to trim off. I haven't gotten to step 22 yet. I think I ended up coming down into the end of here. Yeah, I trimmed off piece A7 and that's as far as I got. So I haven't come down this far yet and prepped the rest. But these I am going to start cleaning up. Honestly, what I do need to do is I got to start painting these parts green. So I'm going to clean these guys up. We'll come right back. I'll get this green era stuff prepped for painting, and I think that might be near the end of this video. I do want to get this video up by the end of the day today. So I think that's going to be my plan. This is that ammo box that goes up inside the nose. Just cleaning up some seams. There is quite a bit of a step on that. Was that user error? Yeah, that looks to be user error. Didn't quite line those two pieces up square, but I think I have a little bit of movement in it. So I'm going to hit that with some, get myself a pair of locking tweezers. Go along that seam with a little bit of liquid glue. Just make sure I've got good coverage on all of that seam. Okay, I'm gonna start prepping this stuff. I'll get the rest of these pieces that need to be painted black prepped, and then we'll come back and get ready to start painting. Okay, so now we are back. I have pretty much all of the pieces now. That's all of the green pieces prepped. I've also got most of the black parts prepped. So the last of the interior instrument panels. One thing I did want to mention, if you didn't catch it before, I don't think I mentioned it. For some of these really small pieces, I'm going to leave them on the sprue. I just cut them off the sprue. I will actually paint it while it's here and then trim it off, glue it on, and then just touch up the little tiny bit I need to touch up once it's installed and glued in place. It's really, really hard to hold that little piece in something tight enough to actually paint. So leave it on the sprue, paint it with the airbrush, then you can trim it, glue it on, clean it up, and deal with the little bit of touch-up paint at the end. I find that is the best way to do it. Now, same here, this is the little, I believe this is a headrest or something. It goes in here right behind the pilot. I think it's just a head bumper for behind the canopy, but don't know for sure. So that's got to be glued in place, but I'll do that. Same thing. I'll paint this the way it is and glue it in after. The last pieces I have here on the paper, I need to glue together. So I'm going to start with the yoke. Find my instructions. Make sure I do this correctly. And so if it looks like skinny part down, fat part up, and there's a little tiny hole on the back. So there's a little tiny pin and a little tiny hole to hold it all together. I'm going to go with my usual Tamiya white, the thicker. That'll give me a good sticky amount of glue. And then that should just line up here. Try not to break anything. And there we go. Put the pin in the hole and make sure the yoke is more or less centered. And then we'll let that dry. Ah. The problem is that the front of this yoke isn't square. There's a little extra bit on that side. I think that's the brakes. Most British aircraft had pneumatic brakes, air-powered brakes, and they had some form of like a bicycle handle on the yoke to apply the brakes. They weren't toe brakes, they were hand brakes. So I believe that's what that is it's the little thumb depressor. So if your left hand's on the throttle, your right hand's on the yoke, you've got a little thumb lever you push to apply the brakes, and I think that's what that lever is representing. But it means when I try to squeeze, it's causing it to torque out and go sideways. So yeah, get it as close to square as I can. I'm probably going to have the rudder and everything centered. I'd like to put the yoke, I guess, forward, elevator down. They should be more or less balanced on the real plane, but for interest's sake, I'll probably end up making it angled slightly. So that's that. Next thing I need to do is the bomb sight, which I got to jump all the way forward to step 35 to see. And that's pretty simple, actually. It's just the base, and then this upper part glues on to the base. So yeah, that's relatively simple. Same thing. I'll use a dollop of my Tamiya white. Get a good amount of glue on there, and then I think I'm going to use tweezers to hold this in place, and this to... Yeah, that's it. Oh, no, she popped off. There we go. Okay, I'm going to get some liquid glue because I'm just going to soak down that seam. It's got quite a bit of coverage. A lot of it touches. So I'm just going to get a bunch of liquid glue down into that seam. Oh, see, and there's... I really do need to get a good pair of tweezers, something that won't cam out like that and cause them to flick off. Need to get a little bit of glue on this side now. Okay, there. I'll let that dry. This is that ammo can again. I need to clean these seams up. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. Now that I flooded the seam with glue, just give it a squeeze. That caused a lot of that glue to ooze out, give me a ridge. And now that I sanded that ridge down, the gap and the little step has almost completely disappeared. That's exactly what I wanted. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Once that's, that goes over here. Once that's all painted up and weathered, that should look really nice. Believe it goes right here. Yeah, that'll be nice. Okay. Put that in the bin with the green paint. The next thing I need to do, and it's, you got to go quite far ahead. I mentioned it earlier. There's these openings here, and I wasn't sure what they were. And as you come down farther in the instructions to here we go, steps 40 and 42. So 40 and 42 is where you put the pieces in, and I can't find any reason why that waits so long in the assembly order to glue them in. And as I want them to be painted the same color inside as the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and glue them in now. Now I have them here, I've trimmed them out, they're sitting on my paper. As usual, I've put 56 on the left, 57 on the right, so it's in order. I always put lower numbers to the left, higher numbers to the right on any parts that have the ability to be mixed up with each other. That way it's easy for me to go, yeah, 47, 48, 49, or whatever. In this case, 56, 57. So I know 56 goes on this side, so I can grab it, put it in place, see how it fits. Always test fit. Always, always. Yeah, that is a absolute garbage fit. So I need to go around and I need to clean up my seams a little bit more. There seems to be a little bit here at the bottom that's getting in the way. So I'm going to sand that back. And I seem to have some plastic at the top. This is such a weird little corner. Oh, that's not good. Where did that go now? Steal a lamp. Okay, good. Right by my foot. Didn't get too far. But yeah, this is an absolute garbage fit, and I don't know why this kit was designed like this. It could have been so much easier to not have to deal with this. I'm gonna have to sand all my edges down just a little bit. It looks like everything is a little too fat in all directions. And then try again. Don't knock off too much. If you sand way too much, it won't fit at all. So I'm just, oh, that's so close. I feel like the problem is actually the inner size of that hole. I feel like the outer portion is fine, but because it's a step, that inner section now is too skinny. So I'm just gonna get myself a file and I'm gonna jam it in there and sand back some of that lip, and hopefully that's gonna solve my problem. And yep, I think that was it. It was the inner. So I'm gonna continue doing that. I'm gonna sand down. The good news is that inner lip is just a gluing surface. You're not gonna have a big problem in terms of changing the look of the kit or whatnot. All you're doing is allowing that inner piece, the inner diameter or the inner shape to fit better. So it's not a big deal if you sand it down a little bit. If you end up leaving yourself, like, all you're doing is just changing the inner shape, which really isn't the end of the world. So I'm okay with it. I think that's a much better fit. I'm gonna go ahead and glue that in. I can do what I did before with this little panel, use a toothpick to hold it in. I'm actually gonna get the glue from the inside. You're less likely to see this area on the inside because it's gonna be down inside the fuselage. Oh, that was not good. Well, lesson learned, folks. That just capillaried completely through and right out onto my fingerprint that was sitting there. So don't do what I just did. I'm gonna have to sand that down later and hopefully it's gonna fix itself after. Now I'm just gonna hold it with a little bit of the toothpick here, make sure I'm getting some pressure. But yeah, that's gonna take some sanding later. That's not good. I mean, I'd have to sand it down anyways, just because the this piece sticks out a little bit. There's no raised detail in this area, so it definitely needed a good sanding anyways, but putting a fingerprint in the plastic was not a smart move. I'm gonna put just a tiny bit of glue from the outside here at the top. Make sure I get glue all the way around. I want to put that aside. I'm going to let that dry, and I'll hit it with sandpaper later. You probably won't even going to notice it when it's all said and done, but that was just a stupid move. Anyways. Can't make every kit perfect. There's always got to be some fun. Okay, get the other side glued in now. Probably going to need the exact same prep work. Make sure all my sides are brought back just a fraction. Give it a shot in the kit. Yeah, I'm getting the same problem on this side. So same thing, I'll go in here with my file, knock back all of the inner ledges, the gluing surfaces, and that now should fit in there a lot better than it did before. So that's all you got to do. Just watch out. Almost put my glue. Watch out for that part. You just need to get in there, as I said, sand down the inner gluing lips, the gluing surfaces, and the rest of it all just goes together nicely. Now I'm going to come in from the inside, soak all of that down with liquid glue. Make sure those joints are nice and... Well, that side definitely looks better than that side. What are you going to do, right? Bit of sanding paper, bit of primer. It'll hide all of that. Yeah, I think that is going to wrap up this part. I'm going to go offline. I'm going to do some painting. We'll come back for the next video with episode 2, and we'll have all this interior parts painted. We can start assembling some more stuff on the sides and get into the weathering phases. I've also got to worry about decals on some instrument panels. So yeah, let's get the green painted. Let's get the black painted. Let's come back and we'll check in again soon.